Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. So last week we went back down to Yankee Stadium to wrap up spring training, and now with the season underway, there has been some tweaks to the roster and some major news on the injury front with Luke Voit, which we'll get into, and of course the Jay Bruce problem kind of solved itself. But we'll go back, last week just to give you some of what you should expect if you do plan to go to Yankee Stadium. Again, they're allowing fans in at a 20% capacity, so it kind of gives what you need to know in terms of the process, what you should do with tickets, what you should do with maybe last season tickets. We'll get into all that in case you missed it. Plus, during this offseason, we had conversations involving the other teams in the AL East that the Yankees will be up against. So again, the Yankees should have a good season because the rest of the AL East should be weak. But in terms of the specifics, what some of these other teams are go through, in case you really want to keep it up with them, maybe they weren't making big splashes. We're going to talk from representatives, at least, from people who follow each of those teams, just so you know what's going on with them and what the Yankees are going to be up against. So the big news to start the season now is going to be the Yankees will be without Luke Voit. So again, pretty much for spring training, the Yankees have been pretty much lucky the whole way. Everything was kind of squeaky clean. Even some of the bats weren't really going the way you would want to. At least on the injury front, which in spring training, that's all you want. Just don't get injured, don't tear anything, don't break anything. And for the most part, the Yankees were pretty much successful with that. Now the Britton situation cropped up, but you can kind of live with that. It's a bullpen guy. Maybe he'll be back somewhere halfway in the season, or you can always pick someone up the trade deadline. But a big crushing blow is always to your position play, and that's with Luke Voit. So turns out, he has some knee soreness. He requested an MRI. Turns out he has a torn meniscus now. He did have a choice where he could have tried to play through it. But of course, him and I guess Yankee upper management figured, what, let's get this corrected right away, just so it's not lingering all season. You come back as soon as possible. So Voit will goes under the knife. He's out, expected to be back maybe May, but just with these injuries, it's always a little more than they give you. So he's probably not going to be out at least till early June. So no Voit. Kind of a big blow. Again, technically he was the home run champion last season, even though it was a shortened season. So you're going to lose his bat. But of course now with the whole Jay Bruce decision, that kind of solved itself. So obviously this was lingering over the Yankees' head. Were they going to maintain the service of Jay Bruce, who again was kind of invited to the spring training, auditioned himself a little bit, bopped a couple of home runs, but it was kind of lingering there. Would they want him on the roster for the 2021 season? Well, while this was kind of going on with Voit, it kind of said, all right, well, Voit's out, so now it made sense to bring Bruce. So the Yankees will have Bruce at least start the season in 2021 in pinstripes, and he could play first base, so it kind of fills that void. I know Mike Ford, they kind of optioned down to AAA, but maybe kind of bring him up. We don't know that bad, but the big news there is that no Voit for at least the first 2 months of the season, and of course Jay Bruce to be there. And frankly, I think it's a little blessing in disguise, some regard, because again, as good as Voit is, and I know he's a clubhouse guy and everyone likes him and he's a fan favorite, all of that, but again, the Yankees are very right-handed. So now this gives an opportunity to Bruce and his left-handed bat to kind of mix it up a little bit, shake up the lineup, so it's not like, righty, where, someone who throws a high-velocity right-handed pitch, you get just buzz through the lineup. Now you put Jay Bruce in there, mixes it up a little bit. Even against a lefty side, it kind of just mixes their eye and their control point, touch release points and all that stuff. So in a way, it might be a blessing in disguise for the Yankees. Again, Bruce is a little older than Voit. Defense more or less the same. And Bruce is really an outfielder, but again, he has been playing some first base. More or less, it's going to be the same thing because again, Voit is no Mark Teixeira, Voit is no Tino Martinez. So you may lose a little defense with Bruce there, but not much because again, it's not like Voit's this great defender anyway. So in the long run, I think this might be good for the Yankees. And again, when Voit comes back, and we'll see how they want to handle Bruce from that point on. But at least good to start the season though. If Voit was going to be out, I'd rather have Bruce there at first base than Mike Ford, who again has been struggling a little bit, struggled last season, not a great spring. So it's good that don't want to see Voit, don't want to see injuries, but it kind of all worked itself out. So Aaron Boone's going to be strategic out of the gate with Tyone. Now, of course, this is going to happen. Again, he's coming back from 2 Tommy Johns. They probably want to limit his innings and number of starts, and I think it's a smart way to go. So the Yankees almost going with a 6-man rotation, but they will skip Tyone the first time through. Kind of bumping him. He has to start right out of the gate, which again, they're kind of going to baby him across the season just to get him to the finish line. So it all makes sense. So even though they announced Herman as the 5th starter and Garcia probably probably going to end up spending most of the season in the minors. At least out of the gate, though, he will probably get a start or two, perhaps in April as they kind of shuffle through. And April's kind of a tricky month. Usually, typically in New York, you got a lot of rain coming in. So you have those games where, like, all right, you go 1 or 2 innings with a starter, and then, it starts raining. Now you burnt that starter. So it's good to have that extra starter arm just floating around because, again, April and a lot of May, you usually end up having a lot of rain outs or games that start and then rain, and now you burnt your starter out. So, this kind of makes sense. And then kind of once June and everything kicks in, of course, Severino will be back, and that's probably a position where you see Garcia probably get sent down, to the minors, and then we'll see what happens. Someone might go down. Maybe Kluber goes down for a while. Again, he hasn't been healthy in like 2 seasons, so he's, they're going to probably baby him as well in terms of innings and number of starts. So even if Garcia at some point goes to the minors, he's still going to be an integral part of this team because, again, other than Cole, the rest of these starters, even with Montgomery, again, he hasn't pitched a full season, in almost like 4 years. So, they're going to have to baby a lot of these starters. So it's important that to have someone like a Garcia who they could bring right up, and he's going to play a role, even if he doesn't start, even if he goes down to minors for a month or two. And when it gets to September, October, of course, they're going to take whoever's the hottest, the best of the best. And at that point, I don't think tenure matters. I don't think age matters. Whoever's throwing the ball best is going to be, the 3 or 4 starters going into the playoffs. And of course, the Voit injury had a trickle-down effect for Mike Tauchman as well, because, the decision was, all right, do we keep Bruce? Do we keep Tauchman? So, well, obviously with Voit going out, automatically put Bruce in, and obviously left the spot open for Tauchman. So, of course, now Tauchman has a chance to, at least be with the club to start the season. And, of course, he's a valuable piece for the Yankees. He could play all the outfield positions. He's a speedy guy. He could steal bases. He could come off, swipe, bring him in as a pinch runner to try to swipe a base. So provides value for the team. And even if he's not going to be there for the long run, he could at least be trade value. Does make a lot of money, and maybe a lot of teams out there would like a 4th outfielder like Tauchman. So it's kind of an all win-win for the Yankees. Or if, let's say Voit comes back and he hits well, and maybe Bruce becomes an appetizer for some other team, and maybe Bruce becomes trade bait. So at least at least for Tauchman, you get a little peace of mind because he probably wasn't sure whether he was going to make the team or not, or if he'd be sent down to the minors. But of course, at least until Voit comes back, Tauchman's going to be there to start the show. So I mentioned at the top, took a visit last week to Yankee Stadium. A couple things a little different there. I saw the city bikes, which is kind of funky. But of course, gave you some updates on what's going to happen in terms of fans going back into the stands, the process for that, as well as I had some predictions for the 2021 season. So in case you missed that, here's the highlights. Off the field business, and of course in terms of fans back in the stands, well, finally New York State and New York City agreed for Yankee fans to be in the stands for the games, but of course there's a lot of stipulations. Can only be at 20% capacity. Now this is going to be funky, and I'm going to break down how this whole works. So first of all, in order to get in the stadium, you got to show you got your vaccinations, you come with your COVID card, or you got to take one of those PCR or rapid tests on the spot. So you look at that situation that you're probably going to have to come early regardless. Now it shouldn't be too big a deal because, again, you're dealing with 20% of capacity crowd, so it's not like you're doing this with 50,000 people, which would just be an absolute disaster. But still, if you're going to go to the game, you should definitely plan, be there maybe probably 2 hours beforehand just to go through all that stuff. Now, in terms of the actual seats, how you're going to get it, it's going to be tricky because obviously now you got limited seats. So first dibs is going to go to season ticket holders and what they're calling limited capacity games. So the way this is going to break down is going to be pods. So it's not like, back in the old days where you just get, hey, row A, seat 1, to sit wherever. You're going to be assigned a pod. Now, if you're a season ticket holder and you don't like your pod, because, hey, I used to sit up in the front row. Why am I in a pod all the way back here? I don't want to pay for this. So they'll refund your ticket for the value, again, if you don't want to accept your pod. But if you do, want to accept your pod, again, the chances are you might not have a great seat as you once had. So, and this goes back to, 2020, because, again, a lot of people made down payments on the seats, and the Yankees were like, all right, do you want to, keep the funds in there and make that go to 2021, or you want your money back? So I guess, at least enough people kept their, their tickets so that, they're going to be there for 2021, and they might sell on the secondary market or something like that. So if you're kind of like Joe Schmo fan right now, it's going to be a little tougher to get a seat. Now, what if you say you had a ticket for 2020, and of course you never got to use it? Where does it go? So basically the Yankees are going to be releasing information. So basically with those tickets, either you could get a rain check for a later date, which might be tough, again, because, again, seats are going to be kind of limited, or you'll just get a refund for the price of the ticket. Now, in terms of the secondary market of places like StubHub, that's going to be really touchy. So the only people who could really get any sort of reimbursement on a seat that you bought on StubHub was the original owner of that seat. So let's just say it got resold 3 times on StubHub or something like that. you somehow have to backtrack that and get that to the original owner somehow, and that original owner is the only person who would get that refund from StubHub. If you can't get that lineage or track that person down, you might be SOL on that. Now, the best way to get the refund, of course, if you ever got your tickets through Ticketmaster, because they're hooked up with the system like that, and basically, and they've been doing this for, Ticketmaster with everything with concerts and everything like other venues. Basically, you can just get your refund back straight through Ticketmaster. So if you got your ticket through Ticketmaster and you want to get the refund, that's probably the quickest way to get it done. If you got it on the secondary market, like a StubHub, like something like that, could still be done, but it's going to be a little much tougher. Does anyone know how this damn thing even works? But the big X factor for the Yankees is going to be Luis Severino. Remember, missed last season due to Tommy John surgery. He's in spring throwing, again, not pitching in any games yet, and won't be available till about June. But you talk about, in terms of if you want to make this is almost like making a blockbuster deal, at the trade deadline. So if you could get him, behind Clory, Kluber, and Cole, 1, 2, 3, in the playoffs, especially, in that first round, you could throw those 3 studs out there at a team. And that just gives the Yankees a tremendous advantage. But again, you're not really going to see him until midway to the season. And of course, they're going to baby him the whole way. He'll probably just do 5 innings like that until he builds up his arm strength. But again, it'll be a real good shot in the arm once he joins the team. So I think 21 is going to be a good year, to use a song from The Who. Tommy, anyway. So I look at this team, I think, this last season, of course, again, it's hard to judge last season compared to this season. Again, it was a team where, you didn't have Judge stand most way, you didn't have Severino there the whole time, but this team is light years much better than that, just the fact that those players are going to be back. But in terms of where this team's going to land, I think they'll get close to where they were in 2019. I think you're looking at a 100-win team. You just look at the AL East. I know Tampa's there, but really, if last season was a normal season, again, last season was only 60 games. The Yankees were starting to creep up behind Tampa a little bit in the standings. I know Tampa won the AL East, but if you had a normal 162-game season, I think at some point, again, getting Judge and Stanton back, don't even worry about Severino, just the fact getting Judge and Stanton back, I think they would have eventually caught up to the Rays and overlapped them and would have been the AL East champs. So this season now, with a full 162 games, I think the Yankees definitely finish way ahead of the Rays. And then again, with this team, which much improved pitching, again with Kluber, with Taillon, with Severino coming back, and of course you have Cole at the top, and really a plethora of people you could put in that fifth hole for the Yankees. And again, you're going to need them spread out a little bit, but I think you're looking at definitely close to a 100-win team. And again, I think they take the AL East title. I think Gary Sanchez is going to have a good bounce back year. I think Gleyber Torres is going to have a good bounce back year. I think Clint Frazier is going to take off, getting his first crack as a full-time left fielder. Again, I think you definitely look at a 100-win team and the AL East title for the New York Yankees. Before the start of the regular season, we had conversations about the other teams the Yankees are going to be up against in the AL East. So we're going to give you a clip from each of those conversations. Now, batting leadoff is Connor from the Locked On Orioles podcast.
The Orioles' best player on the roster right now, Trey Mancini, had his colon cancer diagnosis last year and missed that whole season. And he's back and healthy and in spring training. And, it was kind of a somewhat of a clip to show like, hey, this happened to Eric Davis. He came back. He had the best season of his career coming of it. And obviously everyone hoping that Mancini can kind of do the same thing.
And of course, another name that's been with Baltimore for a while, and of course, some fans, similar how we had A-Rod and we still like trash on A-Rod. A lot of fans not really too happy with Chris Davis. Again, signed a big contract, had the whole PED thing, and then kind of been struggling the past couple of seasons. And again, just it seems like a lot of fans kind of focus some of their anger on him.
Yeah, it was 7 years, $161 million that he signed after the 2015 season. So 2 years left on the deal this year and next year. The thought is, from most people, really there was a question, would they just cut him loose after last year? Because he has really become the worst hitter in Major League Baseball.
And now batting second is Terry. He was from the Bastards of Boston Baseball podcast.
I think if the stars align, we could be an 88 to 90 win team, which should probably get us into a wild card if the stars do align. But we've got a relatively new executive, and Chaim Bloom comes from the Tampa organization, and he's made a lot of cute signings. Garrett Richards has elite metrics, with his spin rate and all kinds of other things that could make him one of the top pitchers in the league. Kike Hernandez can play 7 positions. Marwin Gonzalez can play 7 positions. So he's built a very interesting, dynamic team. But it's nothing like any of the four teams that won championships. And I think the fan base knows that. I was looking at next year's free agency market, and it's not insanely deep with high-end pitching. You're going to have some older guys like Verlander, Scherzer, Greinke hit the market that will probably sign some short-term deals. Noah Syndergaard will probably be the top free agent at 29 years old. So I don't know if we're really going to make a splash there. But the JD Martinez money comes off the books after next year. The David Price money, which we're paying half of his contract going forward, that comes off the books. Pedroia comes off this year. The Red Sox have no long-term money left outside of maybe Chris Sale, who we're not too worried about at this point because he's going to have a rebuilt elbow. So it's going to be exciting in the next few years to see what Bloom does for sure. But I would say it would be extremely optimistic to win a championship before 3 years, I would say.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Sale before. Now they put him on the 60-day starting in February. But is there any progress yet? Has he started throwing, or is there any sort of timetable for him?
I think he's throwing on flat ground right now and then doing general workouts with the rest of the team. So it seems to me early July would probably be the earliest, and maybe perhaps later July, early August. He's about a month behind Luis Severino for comparison. So he's a gamer. I do worry a little bit because he's got that herky-jerky delivery that's probably not good for elbows. Everybody knew he would get Tommy John at some point, you know, with a really violent delivery like that. But by all accounts, he is on track and has had no setbacks with his arm.
Yeah, because when he's on, just his opposing team, I was like, we just got no shot in this game, because when he's on, he's just untouchable. And yeah, like you said, he has that funky motion. That's what pretty much, especially against lefties, you just don't have a shot against him. And if you want to go the rest of the rotation, obviously you can always pencil in Eduardo Rodriguez. But the 3, 4, 5 starters now is a couple of arms in the mix there. You got Nick Pivetta there, Nathan Eovaldi. But just right now, assuming Sale comes back, who you figure would be the 5 starters, pretty much for the majority of the season?
I think you'll go Eduardo Rodriguez, Nathan Eovaldi, Martin Perez, Nick Pivetta, Garrett Richards. And the order is probably different, but it will be those 5 to start the season. I would love it if they put Eovaldi in the bullpen as somewhat of a long guy. And then that kind of paves the way for Tanner Houck to join the team right away.
In the third hole is the up-and-coming Toronto Blue Jays. Now, we had that conversation with Mark from the Section 138 podcast.
Maybe people are thinking about even more than Vladdy is Bo Bichette. He has really outperformed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. over the past few years. Vladdy, as I'm sure you know, kind of came up to the majors and has disappointed a lot of fans, but Bo Bichette has come up to the majors and impressed a lot of fans, and he kind of flew under the radar when he was coming up through the Jays system, but he's really been a top prospect, a top guy for the Blue Jays. Some other guys, Kevin Biggio is another one of those young players. He isn't a flashy player. He doesn't hit for power a lot, but he's a really great defender. He gets on base a lot. He has a great eye at the plate. That's one guy you want to keep an eye on for the Blue Jays. Pitching wise, the Blue Jays pitching is weaker than its hitting, obviously, and it doesn't get a lot of attention. But some guys on that side of thing, Nate Pearson is definitely a name to look out for. He was injured this year, didn't quite make the impression he wanted to in the majors, but heading into 2021, you can definitely look out for him. Jordan Romano made his major league debut out of the bullpen for the Blue Jays this year, and he was lights out. I think he got the first 27 batters he faced out in the majors, so he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, because I think the Blue Jays, they put few games over 500, make the wild card. And I think this season they could, jump up. Because I don't think Boston's going to have a good season. Tampa, we know, there's probably still going to be a thorn, but they lose Blake Snell, so they could probably take a little step back. Plus, I think the whole, kind of, they say a sophomore jinx, like, I guess the euphoria of going there, going to the World Series. Usually teams next season kind of take a step back. They get a little, maybe forgot what guy got them there. So this could be a season where I think the Blue Jays could take a little jump there. So, I guess there could be some, nail biting big games between both, the Yankees and Blue Jays come September.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. It's a good opportunity for the Blue Jays because, like you said, you do have the Rays taking a step back. Although I never want to count the Rays out because, as you said, they always seem to find a way to win. And I think the Yankees are definitely going to be the biggest competitors in the AL East. But even then, I mean, you know better than I do. But it just seems like they haven't been as aggressive as they normally are in the offseason. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like now is a good time for the Blue Jays to make a push. And whether they end up as a wild card team, whether they end up as AL East winners, I definitely think now is the time for them to make a push into the postseason.
But yeah, I mean, the Yankees more or less stand pat. I think they figure like they got their nucleus. We just need to just win, win these big, game fives, which that's just been their problem. So, and again, Baltimore they've been lost for like the last 20 years. I don't know what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, Tampa's always going to be a thorn. Like even on an $8 million payroll, they'll find a way to be competitive. But I think this season it's going to be probably Yankees and Toronto kind of competing for the AL East.
Yeah, I think that'll be the main storyline, and honestly, I hope that's the main storyline because then, like you said, it means the Rays aren't there. I think another thing to keep track of for the Blue Jays at least is what the postseason structure looks like in 2021 because we don't totally know whether it's going to be 16 teams, 14 teams, 12 teams. If it's 14 teams, how are you going to structure it? What does the wild card picture look like? I think for a team like the Blue Jays that might be contending for the AL East championship, but is probably more likely going to be fitting into a wild card spot. I think that's something that's really important to look into, whether they get a good seeding in the wild card position, what that even looks like in 2021.
Batting cleanup, the team that will be the biggest thorn in the Yankees side in the AL East, the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, we had that conversation with Alex from the Raise the Roof Network.
Probably going to be closer by committee. I know that Anderson was kind of the de facto closer, but he wasn't. I think that the way that they're going to do it is just if they get in whatever situation that they're going to get into, whoever they see is the best guy to come out in that spot, then they'll throw him out. And then they'll just kind of rotate like that because I'm hoping that the bullpen will be able to morph from being like absolutely perfect for a 60-game season, just how that goes, to morphing that into, stretching that out to a 162-game season. Because I think that they can do it. But they're really, from what I know, there definitely isn't a specific guy who's going to be closing games. It's just going to be whoever Cash sees fit.
Yeah, because they were the reason they eliminated the Yankees last season. I mean, they were just red hot, and like seventh inning on, the Yankees just had no shot.
Yeah.
I'm sure they want to. That's probably going to be similar to the case. And just going around again, the position players, of course, going back to the divisional series and of course the championships and the World Series. Randy Arena, just out of nowhere, just breaks out. I mean, Yankees couldn't get him out at all. I mean, he took Cole deep, he took everyone deep. And before the playoffs started, was any insight that this guy was just going to have a breakout like this?
I don't think that there was as big as what he did. Now, remember that in the 2020 season, Randy got COVID at the start of the year. So we ended up, I think, only playing 34 games in the regular season because he was sidelined for the start of the season. Him and Meadows both experienced COVID-related problems. So Randy really, he got hot towards the end of the year because that was really the only time during the actual season that he got to play. And then I think that everything that happened in the postseason was kind of like his second half of the regular season, and he turned it on. And I didn't think that he was going to do that by any stretch of the imagination. I thought that he was going to help out, hitting 10 home runs, a new postseason record, and the amount of total bases that he had, which was another record, and RBIs and all of that stuff, and hits. I didn't expect that to that extent. I thought he was going to be good, but definitely he broke out in a much bigger way than I think a lot of people thought. And hopefully with a healthy season this year, starting out healthy, I think he should be fine.
Yeah, and then also another, thorn in the Yankees side during the playoffs was G-Man Choi. I guess he set on arbitration, so he'll be back for one more season. The Yankees actually had him briefly, but I guess, they let him go wayside. But, he's really found a home in Tampa now to become like a kind of a fan favorite hero there.
Yeah, we love G-Man. I didn't think that a man could be that flexible looking like how G-Man Choi looks until I watched him. And apparently in the offseason, he does like specific training where he works on like a first baseman stretch as if he was doing a complete split, which he did during the postseason. But yeah, we love him to death. And he's not by any means the best player on the team. He's just kind of that guy who is just a lovable figure, on any team. And yeah, he's had Garrett Cole's number more. I don't know why it works. I'm not going to complain about it, but it's quite incredible to see. I'm sure for you hate his guts, so I'm not going to try to show off about G-Man Choi that much because I think he's like a 230 hitter career. So,
and another Rays player that kind of goes on under the radar is Kevin Kiermaier. Probably defensively one of the best outfielders out there, but again, really doesn't get much notoriety.
Yeah, defense is incredible. Offense is kind of suspect, but really when you look at Kevin Kiermaier, you don't look at him for his offense specifically. He's the outfielder version of Andrelton Simmons, where when you look at Simmons, you look specifically at his defense because he's one of the best defensive players in the history of baseball. And the same way, I don't think that Kiermaier is one of the best defensive outfielders in the history of baseball, but I mean, he's definitely in the last, since 2000 in the millennium or in this millennium, he's been one of the best. And yeah, his defense is incredible. His offense is very streaky and is very inconsistent. And a lot of people get frustrated about him about that. And he's also been a guy who's been on the trading block for quite a while now in terms of just a name that people think is going to go next, because Kiermaier's salary, I think, is either at double figures now or above that in terms of like 10 plus mil. And I think he'll probably leave soon. They'll probably find a way to trade him soon. And if not, he'll just stick around until his contract's over and then they'll just let him go to free agency. But yeah, for me personally, he frustrates me, but he also, I love him to death because he'll have an amazing game-saving catch, or he'll hit, like a key double in the 8th inning of a game and end up winning the game. But then the next day he'll go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts and he'll screw up a crucial situation. So it's a give and take.
And were there any other offseason moves or anything that, worth mentioning, a trade or an addition to whether it was on the bench or in the bullpen?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a few right now. I know they brought back Zunino for $3 million, which, I mean, I'm still angry that they didn't bring back Travis d'Arnaud after 2019, because in terms of catchers, he was probably the best offensive catcher that the Rays have ever had, even though he played, less than 100 games with them over the course of the season. So I was really angry that they didn't bring him back, considering that Atlanta didn't get him for anything. Basically, they didn't really pay that much for him, and he's a stud for them now. So, Zunino, you don't look at him for his bat, even though he can hit the ball really, really far away. You look at him for his defense, and he plays defense really, really well. He's got a great arm. He knows how to catch this Rays pitching staff, which is extremely crucial and important.
And there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed those clips. Hopefully they have a good start to the 2021 season. And whether you decide to go down to Yankee Stadium to watch in the stands or prefer watching at home, either way, enjoy Yankee baseball. But if you're going to watch on that screen, you really should get it cleaned.